All right, hello everyone and welcome back. We are in session 4 and this is Erica Easy SAT prep course. So I just want to say you guys are doing a really good job. Embrace the process and you will make progress. So welcome back, Erica. How are you?
Thank you for the welcome. I'm doing well. How are you doing despite the cold, the ice, and the snow?
I'm doing well.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Okay. All right. So
What are we going to be working on today?
So we're going to be doing we're going to look at our stuff we did from last week, the writing and language. And we're going to do some reading passages. The reading passage is a little intense.
Indeed.
It's a little dicey. Yeah, it's crazy. All right. So, as always, let me just cue this up, share my screen for 2.5 seconds. So you can see, can you enable me sharing the screen? Erica E and EE, please. This is the Google Classroom code. Most of you have already joined it who are in the class today, but pardon me. Just so I can email you things. I email usually once, maybe twice a week. Nothing crazy. All right, so. Okay, cool. So that's that. Now, I'm going to come over here. We had one math problem from last week, I believe, that we did not do. So we'll look at that. Please let me know if you can't open the Google Doc. Well, I should ask, EP, you were able to open the Google Doc, right?
Yes. Wait, I'm still trying to figure things out at the moment.
Did you click on the link from the chat?
Yeah.
The first link. Are you able to see
Google Classroom?
I sent a link before that.
Oh, yeah, I was able to see it. I'm currently in Google Classroom. That's probably why.
Okay, that's what I was saying, like Google Classroom, you can do that later.
Okay.
To follow along in the class, just look at the doc for now. And then you can hang back after the class and we can just get you set up so I can email you stuff. Again, I only email like once or twice a week during the duration of the course. But for, if anyone can't open the Google Doc, let me know so I can try to get you set up. Anyway, so feel free to politely interject, politely, and say like, hey, I can't see this or whatever, and I will try to get you set up. So first one we're gonna do is, we're gonna try this math problem. Most of the questions I take from Khan Academy. EP, since you're new, I also have a Khan Academy classroom. I don't do too much through it, but it's good to join it and just to get started with doing the practice problems, because the way you're going to improve the most is through practice problems. So yes, so I will give you guys a few minutes to do this problem and then we're going to go over it. So let's say I give you like 5 minutes. Normally you wouldn't get 5 minutes normally, but people are at different levels and everything. So we will come back at like 2:50 and we'll go over this. Okay. So, I mean, I do have the term time off. I do have the answer right after, but because we did do this like we did do it a week ago, so I wanted to just go ahead and give you guys the answer. Pardon me. So I would like someone to still try to, let me pull up my little thing that I draw on here. I would like someone to still try to work it out with me and let me know like where you got the answer if possible. Okay, so I'm gonna call on people in the order that I have you written down. Just how Zoom presented it to me. Let me find my paper first. 1 second. So many different papers here. Here it is. Alrighty. So first up, I have. Oh, I forget it was Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, y'all. If you're into that. AV, can you help me work this out?
Sure. So the question, it says that they're losing 3% per year, and they had 2 million at the beginning. So since you're losing 3%, the value inside the parentheses has to be 8.97 because that's under like 1. You would subtract 0.03 from that. So it would be 0.97. So the answer choices you have are B and I believe was D. Yeah, B and D. And then since it's losing per year, it's kind of like an exponential thing. So I think the answer is B because it's being raised to the power of T years.
Yeah. And you are correct. It is the answer choice. The answer for this one is B. But it can be really tricky. I'm just going to change the thickness of this. Here's this too thick. It can be really tricky because it's like if you don't know where to start with this problem. So let's say you see that it says, okay, cable company, reputation for poor customer service is losing people at a rate of 3% per year. They had 2 million subscribers. So if you know what percentages, what you do to get a percentage, let's say they have 2 million, I'm just gonna write 2 and we know it's in the millions. So 2 million and they lose 3%. So if you want to find out how many customers they lose, you would take 2 for the 2 million and you multiply it by 0.03 to represent the 3%. 0.03 means 3%. So that would mean that they're losing so 0.06 million, because remember this is 2 million per year. So which is 60,000. Because if we did times 0.03 equals 60,000. Just writing it out so you can see, so you know where I'm coming from. The reason 0.03%, the reason 3% equals 0.03 is that because this percentage sign, it actually represents a 100. You see it has two O's and a line. So that literally equals 100. That means out of 100. And this is just background information that you guys can use in, other things. It would scratch my nose. We always talk about, well, I try to tell you like the root words and what they mean so you can, go forth and prosper and know what things mean when you encounter them. Per means for every. This is like Latin. I think per is Latin, I'm not sure, but I know what per means because English is Latin and Germanic and all that good stuff. Anyway, cent means 100, that is Latin. So per cent literally means for every 100. So 3% is 3% or 3 for every 100. Remember when you use the decimal point, when you use decimals, that this 0 is in the tens place and this is in the ones place. Tens, ones. So that's why you would have to put the 0 in front of the 3 to get 3%. Okay, so that's a little background information. Now, as AV had elegantly explained, we're not really, the answer choices are not giving us anything with 3%. So we kind of have to look at it in a different way. If we know that, pardon me, if they're losing 3% each year of their customers, that means that they're keeping 97% because percent means, again, percent equals 100 for every 100. So 100 minus 3, this is the amount that they're losing, equals 97. So they're keeping 97% of their customers from the 2 million. So if you want to find out how many customers they're keeping, so it says the second part of the question, the second sentence says, assume that the company continues to lose subscribers at the same rate and that there are no new subscribers. Which of the following functions S models the number of subscribers in millions remaining T years after the start of 2014? Okay, so we have a lot of different pieces of information. Okay, so we know that they keep 97% of their customers each year. We know that because we know that they lose 3% of their customers, which implies that they keep 97%. 100 minus 3 is 97. So we know they had 2 million subscribers at the start of 2014. Pardon me. And there are no new subscribers. So it says S models the number of subscribers in remaining T years. So we see from the answer choices, we don't have to figure it out, but we see that it's going to be, S is going to be a function of time. S being a, when you see this, S of T, that means that S is a function of time, which means that S is dependent on T. So whatever T is going to influence what S is. It's kind of the same thing when you see F of X. F is a function of time. F is a function of X, I'm sorry, in this equation here, in this setup. Just like when you have, oops, sorry. When you have Y, here Y is a function of X. And it's a function of X because depending on what you put in as X is going to influence what you get for Y. So those are some things we know about already, but it's just helpful sometimes to look at things in a slightly different way. Let me erase this and rewrite S of T. So, oh, using the wrong cursor. Okay. So it's asking for S of T. We know that we didn't have to figure it out because we're looking at the answer choices. Another thing too is sometimes some of these problems seem really confusing and everything. So if you need a start to try to figure out what to do, what you can do is look at the answer choices. So looking at the answer choices, we know we have S of t. We already know that. Then we know we're going to have a 2 because all of the answer choices have 2 next. They have 2, something in parentheses, and then either that thing in parentheses risen to a power, or that thing in parentheses multiplied by something. D is the only answer choice here that has it multiplied by time instead of being raised to the power of time. Sometimes I'm tempted to say the one that's different is the right answer, but sometimes that's not always a good method to use, because sometimes they trick you in different ways. So I'm not going to tell you that that's a good strategy to use. It's not. So from just looking at the answer choices, we have a way to set up the answer as we're working out our problem. So we know that, okay, so this is the setup that we get just from looking at the answer choices, right? We get that. So now to try to figure it out, we know that this S of t equals, we're trying to find out S, the number of subscribers. So it says, which of the following functions S models the number of subscribers remaining 2 years after the start of 2014? S is the number of subscribers. We know from looking at the answer choices that S is going to be a function of t, S of t. So we're looking for how many subscribers are left 2 years after the start of 2014. We're trying to figure out how to get to that point. So the setup it gives us is the number of subscribers 2 years after 2014 equals 2, representing the 2 million. And we know the number of subscribers is going to be in the millions because it says it, so we don't have to be bothered with writing 6 zeros after 2. So 2 parentheses, and then we go from there. So now we know that if we want to see how many, the information it had given us for how many subscribers stay after every year is a little backwards. They said that they lose 3% each year. So if we want to figure out how many subscribers they lose, then we will multiply 2 million times 0.03 to get the number they lose and subtract that from 2 million. But that's not the setup they have for the answers. So then we have to look at how AV said, which was, okay, if you lose 3% each year, then you're keeping 97%. And 97%, just as, so remember when thinking of decimals, this is how 97% would be represented. So now we know that to get the amount of subscribers that remaining, we would multiply 2, just because we know it's in the millions, so we're not going to bother with the 6 zeros, times 0.97 to get the amount of, you don't even have to really necessarily do the amount, to get the amount of subscribers left. So we can eliminate C and A because they don't have 0.97. So now we just have to figure out if it's raised to the 10th power, not to the 10th power, to the T power, sorry, 10th power is a totally different number. If it's going to be raised to the T power, or if it's going to be just multiplied by T. So let me erase all of this. All right, so So S of t, we know we would have to, knowing how we do percentages. So let's say S of t, let's say t is 1 year after 1 year after 2014. So we know that to get the remaining subscribers, S of 1 would equal 2 million times 0.07. Actually, let me do that. And I didn't write this answer down, so I will just do this here. So that's how many subscribers you have after 1 year after 2014. Now, 2 years after 2014, if you think about it logically, this is what you have 1 year after 2014, which is 2015. So in 2016, you're starting with this number and you're going to multiply this by 0.97 again to get the amount for 2016, which would be S of 2, because it's 2 years after 2014. So if you're multiplying each new amount by the same 0.97, that means that you're you could take a shortcut and just say that it's, when we multiply a number by itself, say well, that's what exponents are. You're multiplying a number by itself. Whether you're multiplying it by itself twice, or whether you're multiplying by itself 3 or 4 times and so on. So we see that to get to the, I'm gonna erase this. So S of 2 is this. So to get to S of 2, we multiplied 2 million by 0.97, and then the resulting number again by 0.97. So we multiplied 0.97 by 0.97 twice. Or you could say we squared it. We multiplied it by the square of 0.97. I don't know what that number is. You can put that in the calculator. So if you notice, S of 2, the 2 for the years also matches the exponent number. So that is why it would be B, answer choice B, which is 2 times 0.97 raised to the t power. This is another good reason why you write everything out. So you can kind of see what you're doing. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second as we switch to language and writing. Give me 1 second. Shifting gears here. In 1 second, I'm just going to set up for the next portion. All righty. All set now. All right, so I'm gonna go over what we did for, well, the remaining problems from the writing and language portion we did last week. I believe we had to cover 5 through 11. So with the writing and language portion, it's a little different, just for some basic review. Let's see where to start here. For those of you who were not here last week, and just if you want to go over what this section is on, here is some background information. New people, I can email you the old Google Doc. I think also I will post them to the Google Classroom so you can look at what we went over, because you would not, of course, have access to it otherwise because you're new. So it's mostly going to cover grammatical errors, logical flow of ideas. So you have to read the passage and understand where the author is going with it, because sometimes they want you to input new sentences based on what had come before. So, pardon me, this one is different from reading, the reading section too, because I strongly recommend answering the questions as you encounter them. Because they're going to look like need some elevator music. They're going to look like this. So again, for those of you who are unfamiliar, the numbers that are throughout the passage, you see a 1, 2, and a 3 on the screen at the moment. They're going to correspond to what the SAT wants you to, what the SAT is going to ask you a question about. Only look at what is underlined, because whatever you choose to change, what is underlined is going to be the only thing that changes. So don't think that you're going to change something before or after whatever is underlined. Only look at what's underlined, period. So right here, what's underlined starts with BCE, ends in epidemic, for number 1. Number 2, what's underlined is only the word are. So don't try to extend the change. You may be tempted to, but just stick to what they're asking you to change, which is going to be what's underlined. Okay. We went over subject and predicate and clause. Try to remember that, well, this kind of built on each other, and that's not the lesson for today, but just remembering that you want to make sure you are paying attention to complete sentences, complete ideas. A complete sentence has a subject and a predicate. A subject is whatever the sentence is about, and a predicate is the verb phrase, meaning it's going to show you the action. It's the section of the sentence that has action. So a complete sentence is going to have a subject and a predicate, and it's going to express a complete thought. It's not always about the length of the sentence. The sentence Judy runs, that has a subject. Judy runs is the predicate. It's just, oops, it's just one word, but it's still a complete thought. You could say, expand it and say Judy and her dog run on the beach every morning. Still complete. Now, an example of an incomplete thought, just for review, although he still has his old one. Although he still has his old one. That's not a complete thought, because that word although is signaling that there's something more to come for this clause which is called a dependent clause. For this clause to be complete, for it to express a complete thought, there's something more to come, and we know that because of the word although. So keep that in mind. And if you need more review, there's a lot of review here on the different kind of different grammar and punctuation rules and stuff, basic things. Pardon me. I would highly recommend looking at what a semicolon does, because I mean, people don't even use semicolons regularly, so it's a good review. Let me just get to where I was trying to. Okay, so dashes. Dashes and okay, sometimes you can use a dash in place of a comma. Sometimes that is when a piece of information is kind of an extra piece of information, or that's what people call an aside. So let's say I say, I like to take my dog on walks. That's a complete thought. And you don't need any extra information for that to be a complete sentence. It's a complete thought. I'm telling you what I like to do. But if I say, I like to take my dog, who has black and white spots, on walks. That is an aside. The black and white spots, that's an aside, meaning it's kind of extra information. You didn't really need to know it, but I included it in there to be cute or whatever, give you extra information. So I could say, I like to take my dog on walks. Now, if I include an aside, I like to take my dog who has black and white spots on walks. I could have it like that, or if I want to use dashes, I can use the same structure and just put a dash where the commas are. But whatever I do, I have to make sure that I put that if I start the aside or the extra information with a dash or a comma, I end with the same punctuation mark that I used. So I can't start with a comma and end with a dash. This is technically a hyphen, it's short. Dashes are longer. Actually, here, let me put an actual thing in here so you know what I'm talking about. It's called an M dash, and it's long, longer than a hyphen. See the difference? That's a hyphen, and this is a dash. It's just extra to get to. Okay. Okay. I like to take my dog. This is the aside. An aside is extra information. Let's put it in a cute little color. So we extra information in an extra color. Magenta is an extra color. Okay, cool. All right, so a little bit of a review for things that we went over last time. Please read more to get a more in-depth review of grammar and punctuation and stuff. So now we're just going to kind of fly through, hopefully, fly through the answers. Okay, so, and if you have any trouble with this, please review it when you have some free time. Let me know if you have any questions. You can email me or whatever, and I'll either answer it through the email or I will cover it next time we're in class. Okay, so I'm not going to reread the whole passage for time's sake, but I will start where we left off, which was at number 5. So this whole passage is talking about, healthy outlook for male nurses. That's what the passage is called. So it's talking about the history of male nurses. So, okay, we're looking at number 5. So question 5 of 11, looking at 5. So the only thing we're looking at is that word that's underlined, which is inflating. So it's asking us, see, it doesn't really have a question there. It's just asking, if it doesn't have a question like that, it's just asking you, should it replace the word? Should it keep it as is? Which would be the answer choice A for no change. So for number 5, and with questions like this, where it's asking if you should replace the word, it's always helpful to actually, because if these are so short, it's just looking at one word, it's helpful to actually switch out each of the answer choices within the sentence and reread it, at least for me. Everyone works in different ways though, so feel free to try things out for yourself. Okay, so while Nightingale was successful in inflating the status of nursing as a respectable profession for women, her axiom that nursing was the ideal profession for women created social and professional barriers for men. Okay, so that's with no change. So so if we replace it with answer choice B, which is elevating, it reads as follows. While Nightingale was successful in elevating the status of nursing as a respectable profession for women, her axiom that nursing was the ideal profession for women, ... I'm not going to read the whole thing. So elevating sounds good actually, because it seems that, well, let's say it's important to consider connotation and denotation when you're when you're doing reading passages, writing and language passages, reading for college when you're in college, and so on. Connotation, let's rewind. Denotation is quite simply what a word means flat out. Connotation is the reason we have words that have the same meaning but slightly different meanings. Connotation is what kind of feeling or undertones that a word gives. So, and you'll notice that elevating and rising, the answer choices here, they both kind of mean the same thing. They mean to get higher, right? So elevate, to rise. They kind of mean, their meanings are similar. Inflating, well, inflating has a slightly different meaning, because that's just to like kind of expand, not necessarily to get higher. So connotations and denotations are important because you want this SAT question, it's wanting us to match the connotations and denotations, of course. You have to match that outright, but it's wanting us to match the overall tone, the overall vibe that the passage has. So this entire passage, again, I invite you to read it yourself if you hadn't already. This entire passage is speaking about the nursing profession, yes. Well, I won't say this entire passage because it's focusing on men. Nightingale actually focused on nursing for women. So Nightingale here, it says that she was successful in, let's put in answer choice C. While Nightingale was successful in rising the status of nursing as a respectable profession for women, I won't read the rest because it's not important in this particular problem. So she was successful in rising the status. That works, but it's not as good as the word elevating. Let's try D. While Nightingale was successful in inciting the status of nursing as a respectable profession, inciting has negative connotations. Like, say if you incite a riot, that means you're kind of like starting trouble, basically. So this sentence, while Nightingale was successful in blank, it has positive connotations. She's talking about, or the author is talking about how Nightingale made nursing a respectable profession for women. So that's a good thing. So you want a word that communicates good things like that. So inflating, the word inflating is more like when, say you inflate a balloon, someone has an inflated sense of ego, it means just something like expands. So that's not actually, if you say while Nightingale was successful in expanding the status, that could kind of work. But the best answer is elevating, because when you think of something being elevated, again, that has positive connotations. You're thinking that it's getting higher, it's getting better, it's becoming more desirable in a way. So B is the correct answer, and I will read it with the within the sentence. While Nightingale was successful in elevating the status of nursing as a respectable profession for women, her axiom that nursing was the ideal profession for women created social and professional barriers for men interested in pursuing a nursing job. Or then it goes into number 6. So I'll stop right there. Correct answer is B. Number 6. This is kind of tricky when it has like two problems in one sentence, but again, it's best to keep rereading the problem with whatever you're replacing it with. So again, we're just looking at the part that's underlined for number 6. Starts with nursing and ends with themselves, period. So just look at that. Not just look at that, you're looking at how it fits within the whole sentence, but the only thing you're changing is the underlined portion. So, okay, so I'm just gonna start. We know that we can use clues to the word while. Say while Nightingale was successful. That word while, that is signaling that there's going to be a shift in the sentence or a shift in what's being spoken about. So I could say, while today was a pretty day, it was still 25 degrees. So that word is signaling that there's going to be kind of something conflicting presented. So it talks about while Nightingale was successful in inflating the status of nursing for women, that's a positive thing. It goes on to say that her axiom that nursing was the ideal profession for women created social and professional barriers for men. So that is where it turns to kind of a negative thing. So I'm going to continue reading. Negative, where was I? Sorry. Her axiom that nursing was an ideal profession for women created social and professional barriers for men interested in pursuing nursing. I don't know if that's no, I don't think that's punctuation. I think that's just the line continuing. I was like, I didn't know if that was a comma or what. Nursing jobs as a professional career path for themselves. The answer choices are A, no change, B, their interest of a career path in the nursing field, C, their career path as professional nurses, or D, this career path. Now, for this one, these answers are so similar that I would look at and see what the difference between them is. So A is just the original part, which says, for men interested in pursuing nursing jobs as a professional career path for themselves. B says their interest of a career path in nursing. The preferred career path is professional nurses. These are kind of all saying the same thing. So if they're saying the same thing, then it's your job to say whatever is trying to be expressed as efficiently as possible. That means cut off all the extra stuff. Because honestly, all of these are saying the same thing. I'm looking at the original one, nursing jobs as a professional career path for themselves. So that is a long sentence. It starts with while and ends in this long sentence, nursing jobs as a professional career path for themselves. So that could really do with a lot of editing. So this one is actually, the answer is D. The answer is D because it offers clear, concise wording without repeating any ideas, without repeating anything. So the original nursing jobs is a professional career path for themselves. That's redundant. Nursing jobs, you can either say nursing jobs, or a career. You don't have to say nursing jobs and career path for themselves because that's all saying the same thing. B, you could cut, if you wanted to use B, you probably should cut off their interest of a career path or their interest in the nursing field. Because nursing field, when you say you have an interest in the nursing field, it's the same thing as saying a career path. Their preferred career path as professional nurses, it's all redundant, it's basically. Let me not be redundant in saying that this is redundant. The answer choice is D, this career path. Number 7. Number 7 is one of those, notice where number 7 is, it doesn't have anything underlined before or after it. Well, usually I think it would be after it. It doesn't have anything underlined. So that is an example of when they want you to insert something new. So that means you kind of have to know what's going on first before you choose the right answer. So it says at this point, the writer wants to provide a second example in support of the paragraph's main point. Which choice best accomplishes this goal? So this is asking us to know, it says in support of the paragraph's main point. So it's not the passage's main point, it's the paragraph's main point where this is being asked. So this is this paragraph here. It starts with in addition and ends in gynecology. So we're looking at this paragraph. What is the main point of this paragraph? So after we ascertain what the main point of this paragraph is, then we're going to come up with a second example that fits. So the main point of this paragraph, it talks about, we can skim it really quickly. It talks about the teachings of Florence Nightingale, founder of modern nursing profession, also discouraged men from entering the nursing field. She elevated nursing to a respectable position for women, but that had the opposite effect for men who wanted to do it. Then we see the sentence right before number 7. It's a long sentence. It says, for example, so here's one of the examples. See, it says the question rather, wanted us to provide a second example. Well, to provide a second example, we first need to know what the first example is. So it says, for example, in the early 20th century, many nursing registries created separate lists for men and women, legally preventing men from practicing in areas such as maternal/child health, obstetrics, and gynecology. So kind of skim the passage, but just from that skimming, we can see that this paragraph is speaking a lot about Florence Nightingale, but it's speaking about the history of men being discouraged from the nursing field. And the example provided is talking about how the nursing registries legally prevented men from joining certain nursing fields: maternal health, maternal and child health, obstetrics, and gynecology. So we need an answer choice that fits within the main purpose of the paragraph, the main point of the paragraph, and also carries on from the first example. So the answer here is B. And it's B because it is talking about how men had, so the United States Army also barred men from nursing until the late 1960s. It's another example of how, the first example talks about how men were prevented from practicing in certain nursing fields, and B is talking about how, it's continuing to talk about how men were barred from nursing within the United States Army. It's not A because it is, A is rather just speaking specifically what men who were nurses normally did. The overall purpose of the paragraph, though, is speaking about how men were barred from being nurses. So that doesn't fit the same tone, although you might be tempted to, because the example provided is talking about what male nurses were able to do in the hospital. But it's not quite the main, it doesn't follow quite the flow or the topic or the vibe of the paragraph overall. Now C has really nothing to do with, you could infer that, but that'd be assuming a lot. You could, I don't know if you're thinking like, oh, maybe because men were not allowed to be nurses, they went into careers as psychologists. But that's not what the paragraph is talking about. It's just talking about how men were barred from nursing, the nursing field. D, Florence Nightingale also opened the first secular nursing school. That's not the main purpose of the paragraph, because even when it mentions Florence Nightingale, it's saying the good she did for making nursing a good profession for women, but it's not speaking on, but it still speaks on how she barred nursing from men. So just to reiterate, the correct answer is B. Number 8, again, we're just looking at 1980s, period, do. That's the only thing we're looking at. So it doesn't have a question, so that means we have to figure out if we want to keep it as it is or replace it with something else. So the correct answer here is C. I'm going to read it first as it is, and then I'm going to read it with the correct answer choice. So the tide against men in the nursing field began to change directions in the 1970s and 1980s, due in part to a United States Supreme Court decision that held that the women-only admissions, I'm not going to read the rest. That is incorrect because this word do, D-U-E, do, that word needs, if it's at the beginning of a sentence, well, let's just read the sentence that starts with do. Due in part to a United States Supreme Court decision that held that the women-only admissions, et cetera, that's a dependent clause. Because of the word do, that's a dependent clause, meaning that that clause is depending on another, an independent clause to make it a complete sentence. Because if you say due in part to a United States Supreme Court decision, et cetera, what is due in part to a United States Supreme Court decision? You can't leave that, you cannot leave that sentence by itself or clause by itself. So that's how we know we have to change it, because that period and then the do, that's not what follows after do, it's not a complete thought because of the word do in the beginning. It's not expressing a complete thought. You're left wanting more. You're like, okay, due to what? The correct answer is 1980s, comma, do. So the tide against men in the nursing field began to change directions in the 1970s and 1980s, comma, due in part to a United States Supreme Court decision that held that the women-only admissions policy of the Mississippi University for Women violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. That is a complete thought, although it's very long. So, next problem. All right, so number 9, the correct answer is C. This is requiring that you look at a graph. So this is good practice for that. So the beginning of the sentence where number 9 is says, since this decision, the percentage of registered nurses who are men in the United States has increased. Okay, now number 9 starts from 2.7% in 1970 to 7.6% in 2011. So the question says at this point, the writer wants to add accurate and relevant data from the graph. Which choice most effectively accomplishes this goal? So it means we have to look at the graph. So we're looking at, so 1970 here. So this is a good way to become familiar with graphs. You're going to need to do that. They're in math, they're in reading, they're in the writing and language portion, obviously. So becoming familiar with looking at graphs and translating what the graph is trying to tell you into an easy to understand, like just easy to understand, and I lost my train of thought midway, sorry. Basically, become familiar with graphs. Make sure you do practice problems that have graphs. Again, Khan Academy has a lot of great practice problems. They work in conjunction with the people who make the SATs, so they have really good examples. Okay, so we could just look at, okay, so 1970. In 1970, we're looking at, well, let's make sure that we're sure of what we're looking at. Let's look at number 9. So number 9, the sentence that has number 9 in it says, the percentage of registered nurses who are men. So we're looking at registered nurses who are men. So if you look at the graph, you see the registered nurses. See this, all of this graph is talking about percentage of nurses who are men. So we already know they're all men. We don't have to worry about who's a woman and who's a man. These are all male nurses from 1970 to 2011. Now, the thing though is we have to differentiate between registered nurses and licensed practical and licensed vocational nurses. Those are two distinctions. Notice the second one has dotted line. Registered nurses are represented by a complete line. So now, since the paragraph, it said, for number 9, the sentence, it says, since this decision, the percentage of registered nurses who are men in the United States has increased. So that means we're just looking at the registered nurses, the line that is solid. We're not looking at the dotted line. Okay, so 1970, the registered nurses were about, let's say, 2.7. Oh, sorry, right here. The registered nurses were about 2.7. I mean, that's the number it's giving you in the answer choices. So 2.7 in 1970. And then in 2011, it was 9.6. Let's say 9.6 because, well, that's what the answer choices say. Also, it's a little before 10, but like some way after 9, in between the two. So Answer is C. Moving along. Number 10. This is another example of where we want to, put something after. The correct answer here is A. And we're putting this information here after the sentence, this growth is likely to prove beneficial for both the nursing community and the patients they serve. So this is the correct answer because it supports the sentence that came before it. So according to a 2010 publication from the Institute of Medicine, male nurses provide unique perspectives and skills that are important to the profession and society at large, particularly in the area of men's reproductive health. That supports the sentence that came right before, which says this growth is likely to prove beneficial for both the nursing community and the patients they serve. That perfectly supports that sentence. So that's why that's correct. If you have questions about why the others are incorrect, you can email me. I just want to go ahead and get finished with this. So number 11, we're just looking at, this is a simple like either switch or keep it. So I'll read the whole passage, since not whole passage, whole paragraph. With the demand for nursing services projected to surge over the next decade, the time could not be better for the equitable inclusion of men into the nursing workforce. For patients, this will mean a larger and more diverse set of potential caretakers. And for the nurses themselves, this meant stable employment, relatively high wages, and a rewarding career. We know that we have to change this because the word meant is in the wrong tense. It's in the past tense. Like, oh, well, I meant to do this. That means I meant to do it in the past. This entire sentence, I'll start over. For patients, this will mean a larger, more diverse, will mean, that's in the future tense, will mean. So the correct answer for this is C, will mean. And if you notice, that's just a copy of the other verb phrase that comes before the semicolon. So notice how you have to match up. You don't have to match up verb phrases, but you do definitely have to maintain the tenses, future, past, present, right? Meant is past, will mean is future. So I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. We're gonna go into, does anyone have any questions about that? Any of that? Let's see, 4. So I will move on, just going to queue up this next one. Okay, so now we're gonna do new material. Okay, we're going back to the reading section. For those of you just joining us, this is a breakdown of like what's in the reading section. Here's some strategies. What I recommend people to do that seems to be helpful is for you to, I'm just going to erase this, for you to skim the passage. Okay, there it is, okay. Just find it, 1 second. So skim the passage, then read the question. So when you're skimming, Don't try to understand every single line. Have a focused but like continuous flow of reading. Then go to the questions. And if a question refers specifically to a line, then refer back to the passage. So yeah, if it's something is like, oh, what did line 57 say? Obviously go exactly to where it is. So basically, this is basically a way to save time. And with these reading sections, what I found is you have to kind of trust yourself. If you read the passage and you were paying, you know, decent amount of attention to what you were reading, then once you go to the questions, you should probably be able to answer the more general questions and not have to refer back to the passage after each question, because that's going to take you a lot of time. So you have to kind of read it, trust what you read and that you understood it, because you probably did, honestly. This test is designed to make you have doubt in yourself, but if you got to this point, this grade level and everything, then you probably are actually pretty good. So skim it. Skimming means you're paying attention, but you're not getting stuck up on any one line that seems confusing. There are going to be some confusing lines sometimes. I will say too, this particular passage was interesting because it's a science passage. So they'll have the reading sections will have passages from science, history, social studies, and literature. The science ones will probably require that you look at a chart or a graph or something. This one, it kind of explains what was in the experiment. I'm only telling you this because when you first read the experiment, it might be confusing. Don't get caught up on it. Just read it, finish it, and if you have to refer back to the details of the experiment, then do that later, if it asks you. One other piece of advice I will give, learn to eliminate wrong answers. There's only going to be one correct answer. So that means that even when answers seem to both be correct, there's only one correct one. So find a way to eliminate other answer choices until you get to until you have one. Sometimes you might feel like you have a few answer choices, but then if you approach the problem like, okay, I'm going to find out why this one is wrong or this one is wrong. And then by the time if you eliminate 3, then you have an answer. And if you were able to eliminate 3, then chances are you have the correct answer left. Okay, there are some more tips there. I am not going to read them all at the moment. Please read them when you get a chance. Right now, I'm going to give you, like, let's say 15 minutes to do this. So we'll come back at 4. Read the passage, answer the questions. Let me see. There's another one. Okay. There's another passage right after. But so I don't think we'll have enough time to do that one. But what we'll do is you can do it after this class, and then we'll go over it next week. I'll email you the answers. Okay, so a minute has passed since I last said it. So actually, we're coming back at 4:01. No, sorry, 4:11. Alrighty, so let's, I'm gonna actually open, timer's going off here. Okay. Gonna have it side by side. Okay, so another important thing, I said this before you started reading, but anytime is good to rehash this. It's always important to, when you're reading, doing reading passages, and when you're doing the writing and language passages, it's always important to keep in mind what the main idea is. Oops, sorry. There's always going to be a main idea passage, like all the time, every time. Also, keeping in mind what the main idea is helps you to answer questions that deal with, sorry, just setting this up here. Helps you answer questions when you need to fit, when you need to infer. Infer means you're coming to a conclusion that wasn't explicitly stated in the passage, but that follows the logic of the passage. And a way to get the logic of the passage is if you grasp what the main idea is. So, I have the passage over here on the left, and I will have questions on the right. All right, cool. So I would like to start off with, actually, let's start off with this. How about everyone put in the answers you got for number 1 in the chat? Then I'm going to call on someone to help me explain or help me work through it. Thank you. And you could send it privately or to everyone else. Like you could send it privately to me or to everyone. All right, cool. So just one second. I have to pull something up on my other computer. All right, so who's going to be helping me is ML.
Yes.
ML?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, so I couldn't like read completely the passage because something came up that I needed to take care of.
No
But
worries.
like I'm here, but I didn't finish the text. Sorry.
It's okay. No worries. So I will go down. We'll go down the list. How about MJ? MJ is the next person I have.
I got A because when I was skimming through, I was seeing how it's about crow. It's like crows like solving things and stuff. Smart.
Yeah.
So chose A.
Why didn't you choose B? It says that B says show that crows have been proven to be the smartest of all non-primate animals. Why didn't you choose B?
Don't know. Just chose A. They both kind of looked right to me. I just was thinking it might just be 50-50. So I went with A.
Was there anything else that made you choose A over B? Like any small thing will even like small things, seemingly small things.
Well, I was skimming through it. I didn't really see anything. Probably was in there, but I didn't see it talking about primate animals.
No, you're right. Let's see. Yeah, so if anything, it says when it's speaking about animals other than crows, humans, it mentions humans. Then it says line, what is that, 26, 7, 8. Line 28 here, it says non-verbal animals. Unless I'm forgetting myself, I don't believe it did mention primate animals. But even without seeing, let me get back to where I'm supposed to be. Even without seeing that it didn't mention primate, non-primate animals, you can eliminate B because, this is a main purpose, main point, main purpose, main idea. That all falls under the same umbrella, and that's what number 1 is asking. They're like always going to ask you one of these kinds of questions, which was what was the main topic of the passage. And so the main topic, you have to remember that that's what the whole passage is talking about altogether. Now, there might be one paragraph that talks about something slightly different. But overall, for the entirety of the passage, for the entire passage, it's asking you what's the main idea for the entire passage put together, the overarching theme. And the correct answer is A. I think most of us got A. So I was just asking MJ what made him choose A over B. And because you're going to have on the test things that look very similarly to each other, and it might stump you up. You might think like, okay, so these are basically saying exactly the same thing. So how am I supposed to choose which is the right answer? The thing is, they're not going to be saying exactly the same thing. And that's when looking at details very closely will help you. So once you eliminate wrong answers, so say he said it was between A and B, 50-50 between A and B. That means he eliminated C and D. Okay, cool. So now that you eliminated C and D, okay, so then you compare A and B together to see which one is the correct answer. So, so it says that A says present research approaches used to determine that crows may be able to think analogically, which means in analogous terms. Put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. Sorry, analogous terms, which means analogies, like apple is to fruit, as steak is to meat, whatever. So B says that show that crows have been proven to be the smartest of all non-primate animals. These are both kind of saying that crows are smart. The thing is, B was never mentioned. It never said that they were the smartest. It said that they can figure things out analogically, meaning having to do with analogies. So it never says that they were the smartest. I don't know if that word was even used. Pardon me. And even in the first sentence, first two sentences, the first paragraph, it says a recent research collaboration has discovered that crows exhibit strong behavioral signs of analogical reasoning. That's very close to what answer choice A says. A lot of times the first paragraph will set you up for the rest of the passage. I don't want to say all the time that you can just look at the first paragraph to see what the main point of the passage is, but a lot of times it does set you on the right path if it does not outright tell you what is going on. So within the first sentence, we have a sentence that is very similar to answer choice A. If we go on reading, it says the ability to solve puzzles like bird is to air as fish is to what? Analogical reasoning is considered to be the pinnacle of cognition, and it only develops in humans between the ages of 3 and 4. So that's another place where it mentions humans are considered primate animals, I guess, in the world of science, Homo sapiens, whatever. Or no, I guess we're not primates, whatever. We're related to primates and stuff. So it says analogical reasoning is considered to be the pinnacle of cognition. Pinnacle of cognition means that if you can engage in analogical reasoning, then you're smart. But yes, the answer choice is A. C is incorrect because it says argue that crows need proper training in order to perform complex and advanced tasks. Well, that's wrong because that is not the main idea of the entire passage. There is a point of the passage where it talks about training crows, but even then, but even in line 69, it says not only could the crows correctly perform this task, but they did so spontaneously from the very first presentations without ever being trained to do so. So I'm skipping ahead here. I'm assuming that you read the passage. But in line 69 through 71, it says that the crows did this task without ever being trained to do so. So that kind of disproves answer choice C. Argue that crows need proper training in order to perform complex and advanced tasks. Because they got training at first, and then for the more complex, because there were two parts to the experiment. So for the second part, which was more complex, they did not really get training for that, but they understood what to do. And line 70 says, 70 to 71, without ever being trained to do so. Okay, answer choice D is wrong because it doesn't say that the understanding of crows likely will progress rapidly following a recent study. It never mentions anything about that. Number 2, please put your answers to number 2 in the chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, AS. Please tell me how you got to, okay, let me go to it first. Line 2. Please tell me how you got answer choice D. AS, if you please.
So for number 2, in line 2, it says that crows exhibit strong behavioral signs of analogical reasoning. So they're asking about the word strong in this sentence. And so this would be extreme because it was like a lot more than like other animals that they were looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think extreme would be the best word. Well, the closest word in this case.
Can you do me a favor and can you read that line? Wait, let me find it again. Where I looked away for a second. There it is. It's the second line. Can you reread that line? You can read it until the dash. You don't have to read the entire sentence, or you can. It's whatever you want to do. But reread that line, but replace strong with each of the answer choices. Like for A, replace strong with powerful, then compelling, intense, extreme, etc.
A recent research collaboration has discovered that crows exhibit powerful behavioral signs by analogical reasoning.
Okay, pause. How do you feel about that? What does that sound like?
I don't think that works as well.
Okay, I don't think so either. Please continue.
A recent research collaboration has discovered that crows exhibit compelling behavioral signs of analogical reasoning.
How do you feel about that?
I think that one sounds better. I was debating B and D as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Why do you feel like that sounds good? Better than powerful or strong by itself?
I feel like compelling kind of means more like it shows promise,
Mm-hmm.
like it's worth studying more, which is what they did in this passage.
Mm-hmm. All right. Can you do it with the word intense, please?
A recent research collaboration has discovered that crows exhibit intense behavioral signs of analogical reasoning.
What do you think about that one?
I don't think that one works as well because intense doesn't really work in this scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Okay, finally, answer choice D, please.
A recent research collaboration has discovered that crows exhibit extreme behavioral signs of analogical reasoning.
Okay. So how do you feel about that? Well, I guess
I think compelling would work better for this sentence.
Why do you think so?
Because like with compelling, it kind of shows that like there's like potential in the crows, whereas extreme kind of just means like it's already like at its highest state.
Mm-hmm. You had originally answered D, right?
Yeah, I was debating
Okay.
between B and D, but I
Yeah.
ended up with a D.
Yeah. That I feel like everyone basically got D. So I think it was really tempting to put. What do you feel made you kind of change your mind?
I was thinking extreme because like the crows were exhibiting signs of like really high analogical reasoning throughout the passage based on like all the tests they were able to complete. So that's what made me put D.
Mm-hmm. So the answer is actually B. So you were right when you were talking about, as you were reading out loud, you said how compelling means like, oh, it shows promise or something like that. So strong, it can mean all of these things, right? Like these are like, actually I would even say that the word strong usually means a answer choice A, C, or D, powerful, intense, or extreme. In here it's tricky though, because you kind of have to infer like what the main, this is another example of like, if you're understanding like the main point, I guess, of the overall passage. You're going to, we're probably going to go to like either 435 or 440, by the way, guys, and pick up whatever we don't do next week. Because when you look at strong by itself and you're not considering, well, when you look at strong in the sentence by itself, powerful, intense, extreme, those all fit the usual way we use the word strong. But in this one in particular, we know that, okay, it says a recent research collaboration has discovered that crows exhibit strong behavioral signs of analogical reasoning, blah, blah, blah. So compelling is the best word here, because it's very convincing, or as AS said, and thank you AS, because how you read it and everything, I feel like it kind of makes the point for me. When you read everything out loud, it kind of sounded like you said, you were torn between B or D. Most people chose D anyway. As AS said, it shows promise. So meaning that the crow's behavior shows promise of analogical reasoning. It's not extreme because extreme is another way to say, okay, if you say that crows exhibit extreme behavioral signs of analogical reasoning, extreme, that kind of starts to have a negative connotation there. If you say someone is exhibiting extreme behavioral signs, that's usually kind of a bad thing. Extreme also means like the most of, it's kind of like it means like the most, what am I trying to say? The most that something could be. So that's very vague. What I mean by that is, let's say the weather, the temperature is showing extremes. There are extreme, we're having extreme weather signs. I'm just going to replace this. I'm going to try to use the same verbiage here. So we have strong behavioral signs. I'm going to say extreme temperature or extreme weather signs. So extreme means like you're at the opposite end of something. If I have extreme winter weather signs, that means I'm going to have low temperatures, ice, snow, all that stuff. Extreme. It's like at the when you hear the phrase one extreme to another, that's like the farthest you can go in one direction or the furthest you can go in another direction. The connotation here doesn't fit. Extreme doesn't fit because if you say extreme behavioral signs, again, it's more speaking of like, oh, are the birds acting really crazy? When you say extreme behavioral signs of analogical reasoning, that means that that would kind of mean that they have analogical reasoning like humans, because extreme behavioral signs of analogical reasoning means they're all the way they're doing the max of what it could possibly be. So if we're speaking of analogical reasoning, the max of what analogical reasoning could be would be on human level. And the other extreme of analogical reasoning, meaning not at all, is like, I don't know, an amoeba or something. I don't know what they do, but I'm pretty sure they can't do analogies, I guess. So it's answer choice B for compelling, because also you could think of how a recent research collaboration has discovered that crows exhibit compelling behavioral signs of analogical reasoning. the researchers were compelled to study the crows, or continue study or do more tests and such like that. It seems that none of you chose A or C really, so I'm not gonna cover those. But extreme, again, is more like the climax of something, or the apex. If you're familiar with apex, the word A-P-E-X, apex means the top of something or the high point. So extreme is talking about either the highest point or the lowest point. So if it's the highest point of behavioral signs of analogical reasoning, that means the crows are on human level. If it's the lowest point, obviously we know it's not the lowest point because they could reason with analogies. That one is tricky. They're all kind of tricky. This is kind of a hard passage, not gonna lie. Number 3, please put your answers in the chat. Pardon me. All right, awesome. Okay, guys, if you don't want to show everyone your answers, you can message me privately in the chat. Although, don't feel scared to, share. We're all learning here, and we're all at different levels. And these passages are hard, I'm not even gonna lie to you. Honestly, some college work is not even this hard, so I don't know what they're doing. But yeah, feel free to privately message me as well if you're not comfortable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. All righty, cool beans. Thanks everyone for your answers. Now, MK, can you please tell me how you got A? Yeah, you can type it if your mic's not working. I'll read the question. In the 4th paragraph, the phrase sameness and differentness primarily serves 2. Let's go to the 4th paragraph while MK is typing out what they got. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. And I'll read it up until, MK, while you're typing that out, I'll read it up until that phrase, sameness and differentness. So it says, but what happens when crows are given problems that require more abstract thinking? Before setting our sights on analogical reasoning, we might begin with a simpler abstract task. For example, sameness and differentness are key abstract ideas. Because 2 or more items of any kind, coins, cups, caps, or cars, can be the same as or different from one another. Because sameness and differentness can be detected visually, perhaps that may provide an elegant way to study their apprehension by nonverbal animals. Okay, so I'm going to read what MK said. MK said, I immediately canceled out the other 3 answer choices. Additionally, in the next 2 paragraphs, they describe experiments showing them differentiating between items. Thank you, that's awesome, perfect. So MK answered A, which is to introduce a concept that is central to the experiments described later. So when you have questions that are asking you, okay, why did the author use this? We'll go a little past 440, I mean, finish this up. When you have questions that are asking, okay, why did the author use a certain phrase? It's helpful to probably look to what came after that phrase that they're using, that the question is referring to. Sometimes a little bit before. And when you look at things that come before or after, you're looking at the context with which that phrase or word is in. So if the question is asking, okay, what did this phrase do for this passage? It definitely helps, as MK said, to look at what comes after. And I'm going to use your phrasing again, MK, and refer to what you said. So MK said, in the next two paragraphs, they describe experiments showing them differentiating between items. So differentiating between items is looking at that item's sameness and differentness, and or differentness, let's say. Also, if you want to look at things in the passage specifically, in this is the fourth paragraph here, where that is mentioned, sameness and differentness. It's mentioned a couple times here and here. It says, because sameness and differentness can be detected visually, perhaps that may provide an elegant way to study their apprehension by nonverbal animals. So it's right here, it's setting up the last sentence, lines 26 through 7, 8, 9, 29. It's saying that because sameness and differentness can be detected visually, maybe or perhaps that may provide an elegant way to study their apprehension by nonverbal animals. Then it says, to do so, we ... So right here it's saying, okay, we can detect sameness and differentness visually. That might be a good way to study how nonverbal animals understand that. And to do that, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So A is the correct answer, to introduce a concept that is central to the experiments described later. Refer to the topic that led researchers to begin studying reasoning in animals. That's a very broad statement. It never said that sameness and differentness was why researchers began to study animals. Studying reasoning in animals, sorry. C, revealed that expert scientists sometimes use everyday language in their reports. No, that wasn't the reason for that. They didn't make a point of that, so that's not correct. D, emphasized that certain terms must be used when describing intelligent animals. No, it never said anything about that. So I'm like, I agree with MK when they said that you can eliminate the other three. Okay, so this will be the last one we do, and then we'll wrap up for today. I don't mind staying a little after the session to give you the rest of the answers if you want. All right, so everyone please put in the chat, either chat, send it to everyone, or private message me if you feel more comfortable with that. But put your answers for number 4, please. Also, let me know if any of you ran out of time in answering anything. Okay, B is correct. Okay, DM, I'll see you next week. EP, would you like to close us out and tell us how you got B?
Sure. So B says, are capable of understanding the shared concept that underlines different tasks. I believe that the overall meaning of the article, well, the purpose of the article was to basically elucidate how birds are capable of understanding and adapting to different tasks. And after I read that, I just basically eliminated choices A, because it says grasp concepts because they are similar to things they experience in the wild. And although that's a little similar to B, I just felt like B was more straightforward. C, it says cannot differentiate between sameness and difference after being trained. I don't agree with that statement. D, it says learning a task most quickly when they have just repeated a different task many times. And I agree with that statement a little bit, but as I said, B is more straightforward. I agree with D a little because I feel like in order to understand a concept or to adapt, you need to be able to like do it numerous times in order to fully grasp what is occurring. So that's why I decided to eliminate D.
That was really good, thank you. The correct answer is B. The discussion of animals' ability to apply a learned skill in various testing scenarios suggests that some animals, B, are capable of understanding the shared concept that underlines different tasks. So I like how you eliminated each thing. Like A says that the discussion of animals' ability to apply a learned skill in various testing scenarios suggests that some animals grasp concepts because they are similar to things they experience in the wild. The thing is, the passage, so it says, it's speaking about the discussion of animals' ability to apply a learned skill in various testing scenarios. And that is what is contained within the passage. Now that discussion, which is referring to what is in this passage in front of us, that discussion does not really talk about what, that some animals can grasp concepts because they are similar to things they experience in the wild. Correct me if I'm wrong, like I don't remember that being mentioned at all. It says that they learn. It says that they can learn similar tasks without being taught if they were taught before, et cetera, but it doesn't really talk about what they experience in the wild. C goes against what the passage actually says, so we can eliminate that outright, as you said, EP. D, that does have a ring of truth to it, because we know in the passage it spoke about how some animals learn a new task most quickly when they have just repeated a different task many times. But here, it's saying different task, it's not saying a similar task. And it's also not, let's refer back, it's like line 60 or so. It didn't necessarily talk about how quickly they did it. It says lines 69 through 71, not only could the crows correctly perform this task, but they did so spontaneously from the very first presentations without ever being trained to do so. I guess that would imply quickness. But choice D does not differentiate what kind of task. It just says when they have just repeated a different task many times. It doesn't say a different similar task. It doesn't say a different task that is well, it doesn't say a different task that is unlike or similar to the task they just completed. Because if this whole passage is talking about teaching animals tasks that are having to do with analogies. So they teach them how to look at sameness and differentness, and then they set up a more complex task that is dealing with analogies. So the type of task is important. Now B is the correct answer. So line 60, 1, 2, 3, 62, it says, the relation between one pair of items must be appreciated and then applied to a new pair of items to generate the correct answer. That's one piece of evidence showing that some animals are capable of understanding the shared concept that underlines different tasks. So that the shared concept that underlines different tasks is another way to say the relation between one pair of items, and then you apply that same relationship or relation to a new pair of items to get the correct answer. So B is the correct answer there. Oh, we'll do this because it's related to that one. I'll just tell you what it is. Number 5 is C. So this is asking what shows you evidence. So we're going to look at lines 32 to 35. 1, 2. So several species of birds and mammals learn this task and also transfer their learning to new stimuli, showing that they have learned an abstract concept which extends beyond the training items.
Erica,
Yes.
I just wanted to say that I don't have access to the Google Doc. I decided to wait until after class, but we're still doing it. I didn't want to be a burden to everyone else because I knew that it would be time consuming. I was able to read the full article through the website though, and I just kind of was like processing which was the correct answer as you scroll down and asked us to submit our answers in the chat box.
Okay, EP. You do well on this test. You didn't even have access to the Google Doc. Well, I will say that is answer choice C. Hang around. We're going to close out the recording. But once Isaac stops recording, then we'll get you set up with the Google Doc, okay?
Okay.
So next week, we're going to do 6 through 11. If you want, I'll we'll see. Let's close the recording first.
All right, everyone, thanks for coming to the 4th session. I look forward to seeing you guys on our 5th session. You guys are doing a really, really good job, and just stick with it. We're gonna close out for the day.